The White House Budget Director Peter Orszag is with us here in the studio from Cincinnati, Ohio. Republican leader in the House, John Boehner. We're going to start this morning with Peter Orszag. Mr. Orszag, there seems to be opposition building now, not from Republicans, they've been against it from the get-go, but from Democrats to the president's plan to fund the expansion of health care by reducing the deduction that upper income taxpayers get when they give to charities. The Treasury Secretary said the other day the administration understands there are other ways to fund health care. Does that mean that the president is rethinking this plan to reduce those deductions on upper income taxpayers?
Well, I think as people start to look at that proposal in more detail and compare it to the alternatives, they're going to come around to our proposal. But let's step back and remember, we want to get healthcare reform done this year. Healthcare costs are burdening workers, state governments, and the federal government. We just held a health forum in which there was broad bipartisan support for getting health reform done this year. In addition, we have significant savings within Medicare and Medicaid that we have put on the table. For example, $177 billion in reducing subsidies to private insurance companies that cover beneficiaries under Medicare and do it inefficiently. I think there's a lot of momentum behind healthcare. We're going to get it done this year.
But I want to go back to my question. Is the president going to reconsider this idea of reducing those deductions as part of the plan to fund health care?
We put a proposal on the table. We think it's a good proposal. Inevitably, as the legislative process moves forward, other people will put proposals on the table. Let's let that play out.
So right now, would you say that the president is open to other ways to do this if he could find it?
I'm going to again say we think this is the best way of proceeding, but of course other people have ideas and they should put them on the table.
Congress has already approved an enormous stimulus package, but when the unemployment figures came out last week, said unemployment is now at 8.1 million people. Some people began to say we may need yet another stimulus package, that this one may not be enough. Are you thinking of another stimulus package? Do you think it'll be necessary?
Well, look, within the first month in office, we got the Recovery Act in law enacted. We should give it some time to work. You are starting to see the money flow out to state governments, to unemployed workers in tax relief. Let's give it some time to work. We face a very deep economic hole. It's going to take some time to work our way out of it. Let's give the Recovery Act its
How much time do you think you'd need, Mr. Orszag? I mean, have you begun to see any impact yet? Or when would we begin to see?
Well, again, the money just started to flow, so it will take weeks and months for it to start to have an impact, and we are facing a very deep and severe economic contraction.
You know, every time the president proposes some sort of a rescue plan, it seems as if the stock market tanks. It goes down. It went down again this week when he started talking about this mortgage bailout plan. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think fundamentally the economy is weak. The job losses began in January 2008. The stock market started declining in October 2007. This has been 8 years in the making, and again, it's going to take some time to work our way out of it.
Brokers don't seem to have much confidence in what the president is doing. Why is that?
Well, I don't know that I guess I'm not sure I agree. I think, again, we're focused on getting the economy back on its feet, addressing our long-term deficits, and, by the way, investing in what corporate leaders and others have long said is the key to our economic future: a better education system, clean energy, and a more efficient healthcare system.
The president said last week that we shouldn't worry too much about the losses in the stock market. He said it was kind of like watching political polls. Listen to this.
The stock market is sort of like a tracking pole in politics. It bobs up and down day to day. And if you spend all your time worrying about that, then you're probably going to get the long-term strategy wrong.
So what about that? Is this a good time for people to go invest in the stock market? No brokers seem to be telling people to do that.
Well, I'm not going to give stock market advice, but again, if we look at the underlying resilience of the economy and focus on getting the economy both back on its feet in the short run and then investing in the things that lead to economic performance, education, a better healthcare system, we will be doing our job.
Lindsey Graham said this morning on Meet the Press that the president's budget is scary. He called it a reckless exercise that is scaring people. Is your budget scary?
Well, as Ronald Reagan once put it, there they go again. We've had 8 years of one approach, didn't work. We're offering a new approach. Let's look at what the Republicans are putting on the table. The senior Republican on the House Budget Committee has put forward a plan that includes $3 trillion in tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations, a Medicare program when you turn 65, you'd be handed a check for 80% of the cost of health care and then you're on your own, and a Social Security plan in which your Social Security funds would be invested in the stock market. I'm not making this stuff up. That is their alternative plan. I think they should come on the show, offer a detailed alternative to what we're talking about, and then let the American people evaluate the two ways forward.
Well, they are on the show because John Boehner is sitting right there, and we're going to talk to him in just a minute. The spending bill that is now before the Congress to keep the government running for the rest of this year includes $7.7 billion in earmarks. The president said he's going to go ahead and sign that. He doesn't like it, but he's going to do it. Republicans have managed to block it, so you've had to have a continuing resolution which keeps the government running, but at last year's spending levels. Is that what's going to happen here? Will this whole spending bill just go by the by, and we'll end up the year with continuing resolutions holding spending to the levels of last year?
I don't think so. And again, these bills were supposed to be done last September. They are already negotiated. They include important things like $200 million to fight healthcare fraud, important investments in Pell Grants. They also contain a level of earmarks that, even though it's down significantly from the peak, down 75% from the peak under the Republicans, still too high. But we're like a relief pitcher stepping into the 9th inning, and we can't just redo the whole game. Next month, we're going to start the process on the fiscal year 2010 budget. That will be under our watch, and the game's going to be a lot different.
John Boehner, who's about to follow you here, says we need a spending freeze. Good or bad?
Well, I think, look, we're talking about changing the course here. We need to, unfortunately, we have underinvested in education, in clean energy, and in healthcare. We need to make those key investments while also getting more efficiencies out of the rest of the government. That's exactly what this budget does. It reduces the basic operations of government to the lowest levels as a share of the economy.
So
since
you're against
1962.
the spending freeze?
I just don't think that's a blunt approach. We need to be investing more in some areas and then obtaining more efficiencies in others.
All right, Mr. Orszag, thank you. And we're going to get the other side of it now from John Boehner. Well, what about that, John Boehner? Why do you think that it's a good idea to just simply freeze spending?
Well, because I think if you look around the country, our economy is struggling. American families are tightening their belt, but they don't see government tightening its belt. And I think that we can get through this year and lead by example and show the American people that the government can go on a diet as well.
Well, you just heard what Mr. Orszag said. He said the Republicans keep saying no, but they really hadn't come up with much of anything. What's your response to that?
Bob, we had a plan to stimulate the economy that cost half as much as the president's proposal and would have created twice as many jobs. Under our plan, we would have created 104,000 additional jobs here in Ohio. And as we look at their budget, it's pretty clear that their budget spends too much, it taxes too much, and it borrows too much from our kids and grandkids. It's time for government to go on this diet. It's time for government to tighten the belt and show the American people that we get it. Because I don't think most Americans today, when they look at Washington, they look at what in the world's going on over there. They want Washington to do the same thing they're doing.
But don't you have to come up with something a little more specific? Some people say, look, it would be a lot better if you'd make a few compromises here and try to work with the president to dig our way out of this hole that we all find ourselves in. And at the same time, they also point out that the president's popularity ratings keep going up while the Republican Party's ratings keep going down.
Hey, Bob, listen. I want to work with the president on behalf of the American people. That's what they sent us to Washington to do. And while I like the president as much as the American people do, I think he's a great guy. There are serious differences in terms of the approach that he would like to take and the approach that I think many Republicans would like to take. This week we had the proposal on bailing out irresponsible homeowners. And what the president's plan does is ask the 90% of mortgage holders who are struggling to make their payments and make them on time. He's asking those 90% to bail out the other 8 or 10% who've acted irresponsibly. That's not what the American people want. And so when we have disagreements, I think it's our obligation to offer alternatives. And I just believe that when it comes to housing, we ought to have the $15,000 tax credit that was in the stimulus bill for all who would buy a home, because at the end of the day, that will help all homeowners in terms of increasing the value of their homes.
There's no question that the White House is encouraging the idea that the person who really speaks for your party, the person who is the most influential amongst Republicans, is Rush Limbaugh. What is your response to that, Mr. Boehner?
Bob, this is a distraction that was created by the White House to divert people's attention from the spending binge they've been on over the last 6 weeks. And it's really unfortunate because this distraction won't create one single new job in America, and it won't help one struggling family in America. And what we really need to do is work together in a responsible way to address the needs of our economy and the needs of American families and small businesses.
Well, he certainly gets a lot of attention. Do you think Rush Limbaugh is the leader of your party?
There are a lot of people who want to speak on behalf of our party. And over the course of the next few years, we'll see a lot of people emerge, whether they be governors, members of Congress, those who may be on the outside, who want to take a more active role in our party. But at the end of the day, it's important for members of Congress and governors to speak up in terms of how our principles will lead to policies and proposals that will help the American people. I said on the opening day, when I gave Nancy Pelosi the gavel, that we wouldn't just be the party of no. When we had to disagree, we would be the party of better solutions. And you'll see us continue to put forward better solutions to the problems Americans face. When you look at what's happened on Wall Street the last 6 weeks, the reason the market continues to go down is because many people on Wall Street don't think the policies the president's proposing will work. At the end of the day, I think we needed to do a stimulus bill, but I've got concerns that all it will do is grow the size of government and put a lot of debt on our kids, and it really won't stimulate the economy. And I think Wall Street's saying the same thing.
You know, last week, auditors said that General Motors' survival was in substantial doubt. Now, you're from Ohio. There are a lot of auto workers that are already out of work there. Do you think General Motors could survive bankruptcy?
I think they could survive bankruptcy. Hopefully, they'll be able to come to an agreement with all of their stakeholders before they get to that point. You know, and the stakeholders are the stockholders, the bondholders, and the employees. And at the end of the day, all of them are going to have to come to an agreement to help this company survive. It's an important institution in our country. It impacts hundreds of thousands of jobs, but they have to do the serious work that they've avoided doing over the last 30 years if they're going to survive.
They may be coming back to the government for even more money. Would you favor another infusion of federal money to General Motors?
I don't think the government should put any more money there until General Motors shows that they can be a viable company for the long term and that there's a reasonable chance that any loans that the government would make would be paid back to the taxpayers. Anything short of that is just throwing good money after bad.
All right, Mr. Boehner, I want to thank you for joining us this morning.